Satnam everyone, and hello for those of you online. Satnam Sohail and Satnam Infinity, welcome to the stream. I'm glad you are connecting. Today we have an open day. We don't have anything planned specifically. I have a meditation that I think we could do. But if you have any suggestion for any topic you would like to discuss, I am very available to have that conversation with you. So if you want, particularly those of you who are online, feel free to write in the chat the topic that you would like to talk about. We're doing today a little break also from all these videos we have been doing on the Yoga Sutras. We finished the chapter 1 this week. We're going to start with chapter 2, the practice, on next week, on Tuesday. And on Thursdays, the following weeks, I'm going to be doing some conversations with other yogis and teachers and trainers from my community. Particularly some of my spiritual brothers who we've been keeping in contact for many years and supporting each other, and we're going to have a conversation together. Just like in the other weeks, we had my sister coming here a few times in the channel, and that's my idea, to have some people who we can have a conversation about something related to the spiritual life. So that's the idea for the coming weeks. But for today, it's open. Today is the 10th of October, 2024, and October is the month 10th. And if you add the 1 from the 10th and the other 1 from the 10th of the day and the month, and the 2024 of 2024, you have a 10. So today is 10, 10, 10. And Satnam Isabel, hello, welcome. And I was just saying, Isabel, today I don't have anything planned. I have nothing specific to talk about today. So if you would like to suggest a topic, we can explore it here in the conversation. Today is 10, 10, 10, and the number 10 is associated with the totality, the wholeness, completeness, something that is complete. The circle of the 10 represents something that is complete and by itself perfect. And in relationship to numbers, we haven't seen too much about number 10, but there is this concept of the 1 and the 0, the all and the nothing. And by the way, I will just point out that we did a course on the number 7 and number 5. We were supposed to go into number 1, but I did this little break to go into yoga again. Yeah, I tried to explore both numbers and yoga. And so we will come back to the Karankriya number 1 after we explore the Yoga Sutras a bit more in depth. Let's see the comment from Infinity. What's the relationship between numerology and spiritual practices? So, for example, chanting a mantra certain times or doing in circle around a temple certain time. All right. Okay, good. Thank you for suggesting a topic. And anybody else, if you have another topic, please suggest it, or any question you may have, feel free to just write it down in the chat. I will address Infinity's question then. And so yeah, we have 10 numbers, so it's relevant that we talk about the numbers, yeah. Even though number 10 is a bit special, we would say that it's like 9 numbers and then something special. The 10 is the something special. And 10 is 1 and 0, that's all or nothing. So it's a day for either all or nothing. Let's see what that means. Yeah. So your comment, Infinity, numerology and spiritual practices. Let me take it like this. I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday. I don't know if I've verbalized it this clearly, but I'm going to do it today. I think I mentioned it when I was doing the conversation with my sister. But basically, this is it. Numbers will always exist. It have existed since the beginning of time. And they were probably there even before time started. Yeah, from the very beginning of the universe, numbers have been. And the day that everything stops existing and all the universe collapses, if it collapses, or who knows what happens, but the day that is the end of the universe, numbers are going to be there, because numbers have inherent qualities that are present all throughout nature and existence. You can observe the numbers. Also, it appears in yogi practices like in pranayama and doing Surya Namaskar certain times. Yes, good. I will go into that. I will slowly build up to that. Thank you. So, numbers have always been there even if there was nobody to observe them. This is like the whole idea of, if a tree fell in the forest, did the tree make a sound? Well, I mean, depends on how you define sound, but there was definitely a tree, right? Even if nobody watched it. So numbers have always been there, and they will always be there until the very end of existence. And if we understand that there is some very intelligent force guiding this existence, guiding the creation and destruction and organizing of this world, the God, of this universe, of everything. There is this concept of God, an intelligence that is primordial, that is supreme, that aligns things. And if we live in a harmony with that alignment, then we are in a constant development and growth, and growing towards a realization that we actually are not separate from this intelligent force. But if we try to do things our way and we fight against that, then we live a life of obstacles and challenges and frustration and a lot of things like that. Now, it doesn't mean that challenges are not going to be there when we are aligned. Challenges are part of our growth. But there is a force, there is an intelligence force, there is a God that is aligning things, that is directing these things. There is a certain laws that are created by this God. Okay, so God has always existed. God will always exist. As long as we have this universe, we can say, okay, this was created by this God. Okay, so if we have numbers from the beginning of existence, and they will be there until the end of existence, and we understand the numbers is a language, like we can say 1 + 1 equals 2. Okay, we can agree to that. So there is a way that we can understand how numbers describe nature, describe our experience. Therefore, numbers is a language. And I remember when I was little, I was reading these things that there were, some scientists saying, well, someday we may see aliens. How are we going to communicate with the aliens? And they were saying, well, we have to utilize something that we have in common. And they came upon, numbers, mathematics, because if there is an alien in the universe, they are going to be experiencing 1 and 2 and 3 and the concepts that 1 + 1 is 2, even if they call it by different names, even if they have a different means of perception. The concept of 1 and the concept of 2 and 3, these are something universal. So they created this kind of code utilizing mathematics and physics, because, if some aliens come to visit us, probably because we are not going anywhere so far. So if any alien comes to visit us, they know the space and they know the solar system. So we can start from there, from something that is common in both of us. Yeah. Independent of whether aliens exist or not, and we're going to go into that. But independent of that, it's interesting that somebody, and physicists and mathematicians are, tend to be very rational people, and those would be more inclined to negate the presence of God because of rationalism. And yet, if we come to think about some language that is universal, mathematics is what comes up, because mathematics reflect the truth. All right. Well, without going much into the concept of truth, let's take that. Mathematics are universal, and it is a language, and it has been there, and God is the creator of the universe. And the moment that this universe is created, it has these numbers, which is a language, which means that mathematics is the language of God. So if we understand mathematics, and when I'm saying mathematics, I'm not talking about differential equations and very complex formulas. I'm talking about just to start with the very essence. There is such a thing as a 1. There is such a thing as a 2. Whether you call it 1, ichi, uno, whatever name you want to give it, there is such a thing. All right. So if there is numbers, and they have essential qualities, and they are the language of God, anybody who is inclined to have some form of relationship with God, listen to this. You want to have a relationship to God? Good. Now, the language that God speaks is primarily and primordially, first of all, through numbers. So wouldn't you want to be interested in understanding better these numbers? Doesn't it make sense? Right? If this is the language of God, And it has been there before humans existed. It will continue being there after humans exist. Wouldn't you want to relate in some way through numbers? So, if you want to have a communication with this infinite, with this incredible intelligence, and this is the language that it speaks, then maybe through numbers we can create some sort of connection. And very much like if I want to phone, let's say, Infinity, right, here on the chat. Let's imagine that I had his phone number. So if I wanted to phone, I would have to dial some numbers. So in the same way, if we could know the numbers that allows us to connect to this primordial intelligence, we could create some sort of connection through this language, this common language. All right. So far, so good? Yeah? And feel free to write in the chat if you disagree or you feel that something is weird about my reasoning. I'm utilizing reason, I'm utilizing the mind to connect to something that goes beyond the mind, because numbers and the intelligence that is behind the numbers is more magical than anything else. It's more more non-rational, not necessarily irrational, but it's more non-rational than rational. So what I'm talking about, connecting to God and communicating with this universal intelligence in some way, it's something that is not rational, and it's close to magic. So numbers are something that is close to magic. Okay, so Infinity, you were asking the first question, what's the relationship between numerology and spiritual practices? And I would say, well, numerology is the study of numbers, and numbers is the primordial language to communicate with God, the ultimate expression of what is spiritual. So I would say there is a very, very strong connection between numerology and spiritual practice. Now, numbers can be seen in many ways as a language. Now, I am suggesting to explore the nature of numbers very much like the way Pythagoras would approach it. And when you look at the Greece and how these incredible philosophers, that was like, they called it the cradle of civilization, right? And within Greece, these numbers would not be separate from other teachings. So you would go into these schools of philosophy and numerology, and well, it would be called mathematics, but Pythagoras talked about the quality of numbers the way we are talking about it in this channel with Karam Kriya. He would talk about numbers, music, art, language, politics, philosophy, all in one package. It's all connected in many ways. So the numbers have a profound essence in everything. And if you can connect to that essence, then you have an access to some intelligence behind anything. Politics, science, art, whatever. You can find numbers in art. You can find numbers in politics. You can find numbers in language. You can find numbers everywhere, because number is the common strata, the basis, the foundations. So when we are studying the numbers in this course that we started in this channel, we were trying to approach numbers in that way, with that philosophy and with the idea that there is a primal intelligence behind that. Now, numbers can also be utilized in some particular way to create some sort of effect. So, Infinity asks, for example, chanting a mantra a certain number of times. Well, if you, 108 is a very sacred number. It's the number of beds that have malas for meditation, like these rosaries that they use in India for meditation. And 108, I think I already mentioned it somewhere in the channel, the symbolism of the 1 and the 0 and the 8, and the 1 is the creation, that's the G for God. The 0 is like the organizer, and the 8 is the number of death. So that's the destruction of God. So 108 is a very symbolic number, and when you are reciting a mantra 108 times, it is not the same as when you're doing it 107 times. There is why? It's magical, right? We don't know why. We cannot explain why. But if you do it, you have an experience. So this is the thing about yoga. The good thing about yoga is You don't have to believe it, you just have to do it and have an experience. And just be enough open to have the possibility of that experience. But keep it skeptical. That's fine. I am the greatest skeptical. I've been through all sorts of forms of skepticism. And if I'm teaching this now, it's because I'm convinced. And I have had my own experiences. And I have had my own experiences of magic. I was just talking to my daughter, the oldest daughter, yesterday, and she was asking me, Dad, you know about magic? And I was saying to her, you know about magic, because she had magical experiences too. And it was just reminding her, do you remember that time? And she's like, yeah, that was incredible. And that's something very private of her, but I'm not going to share it. But she was recognizing, yeah, that was magical, wasn't it? Because that was something that happened and it had absolutely no rational explanations. And I've had plenty of these experiences, and enough to prove to me that there is magic. Now, when you chant something 108 times, you are calling upon this magic. And we're calling upon this magic to come into our lives. And it's so fundamental, it's so important. When we talk about the 5 axes of numbers, like 1 and 9, 2 and 8, 3 and 7, yeah? When we talk about the 5 axes, similar to the 5 elements, as strong as the 5 elements, there is 5 fields. There is the field of education, there is the field of arts, there is the field of science, there is the field of medicine, and the field of magic. And when we were little, all children have very strong connection to magic because they just came from the magic. They were just born. So they have this innate, incredible connection to the spiritual. I'm coming back to the concept of spiritual practices, infinity, to your question, yeah? Children already have, innocently, they have this strong bond to the infinite and to the universal. Now, as their ego begins to form, the ego becomes a barrier between their soul and experience, and then they start to feel separate from the world and from the universe. And so that thing which was so natural before, and they could just connect it with an internal feeling, is lost and is replaced by something else, something that comes with the ego. And I think every child is fascinated by magic. And when you see a magician, and I'm using the word magician very specifically now, one of those who do tricks, and you see them in the street, and yesterday we went to eat, my daughters and I, to a takeout restaurant, but we actually sat in, we didn't take it out. We were sitting there having some baos, these Taiwanese burgers, and there was this guy, very kind. He came in front of us, saw the 2 girls, and he decided to do a magic trick. We were sitting on the balcony to the window, so we were looking out of the shop, and we were in like a high bench. So the 3 of us were looking out. We were not like sitting in a table, but we're looking out. So he came, he saw us, saw the 2 girls, and he did this, and he started to do a magic trick, which I appreciated. He was very generous, and he wasn't even asking for money. He just did it. They laughed a little bit. I smiled, and he saluted, and he went away. He didn't go asking for money or anything. He was just purely doing something selfishly for the girls, and I appreciate that. Now, he was a street magician, and he was doing a trick. And every child enjoys a trick. Every adult can enjoy the trick. But there is something when the child discovers that it's a trick that is deeply disappointing, because that they were believing in magic, and they had assumed that that's true. And when they are old enough to understand that that's a trick, and that could be like 4 years old or 5 or maybe 7, the moment that they realize that that is a trick, maybe they were never told before, the moment that they see that, it's like an incredible heaviness on them. Because all this hope that there is something magical, it kind of comes crashing down. And if they haven't had a magical and mystical experience themselves, it's difficult to support the concept of the divine and to align themselves to the divine. And it's easy to think, well, if that is a trick, everything else is a trick as well, and magic doesn't exist. And like the Pearl Jam song, yeah, you trade magic for fact. Now there's no trek back. Yeah, you traded magic for fact, and facts mean the rational, logical mind, which is very much linked to the ego. And so now there is no trade back. When you decide that there is no such thing as magic, the doubt to anything mystical and mysterious and magical and sacred and secret gets into this doubt box. And we start doubting everything that can go into that box. And doubt can be like a little worm in a barrel of apples. It will eat everything up. And hopefully, if the grace comes, at some point you will have some experiences that will prove to you, and maybe sometimes 2, 3, 4 times necessary to break through the barriers that we set up with our doubt, so that you realize that it's true. But most people don't have an experience, especially if they are closed enough. They will have an experience and they will negate it, or they will try to find some weird explanation of how that's possibly an incredible coincidence or whatever, or just some form of hallucination, or I imagined it or whatever, just to avoid coming to face to face with a concept that there is such thing as magic. Now, those of you who come here into this channel, probably I assume you are open enough to contemplate it, if not already very much in contact with. Okay, let's take it from there. Let me one step back. There is such a thing as God. There is such a primal intelligence. There is a language that God speaks, and that language is mathematics and the essence of numbers. And numbers are magical. And when you align yourself with these numbers in some ways, magical things happen. Now, if you want something magical to happen in your life, let's say you are having a tough moment, maybe a tough moment of 5 years. Let's say you are having a difficult situation. You are facing challenges, maybe in health, maybe with your family, maybe somebody died, maybe you lost everything. And you are questioning yourself, is there a possibility for something higher to happen in this life? Is there a meaning to this life? Is there some possible way out of this hole? And sometimes we are so deep into that hole that we feel that the only thing that could save us is some miracle. A miracle is just another way to say something magical. Well, miracles happen, and magic exists. If you are open to it, you can tune into that. And the teachings of yoga don't always say explicitly why. Actually, it would be difficult to explain how, because we don't know how, we just know it does work. So let's come back to the original question. Chanting a mantra a specific number of times. If I explain, I already mentioned on the 108, but let's go to something simpler. If I inhale and I do it for 8 seconds, and I count 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah? And I'm not concentrated so much about the fact that it's 8 seconds or the duration. I'm not thinking about the duration, I'm thinking about the count. So if I'm counting 8 to inhale and 4 to exhale, there's something going to happen there. And if you keep inhaling in 8, exhaling in 4, something is going to happen. If you inhale in 4 and exhale in 8, something is going to happen. And you got to do it to have the experience. You got to practice it. You got to test it out. We have the right to challenge God in a way and to say, okay, God, do you really exist? Come to me. Show it to me. Yeah. Give me an experience. How is this different? You're telling me, I'm telling you right now that numbers exist and numbers are mystical and magical. Give me an experience. Let's take a look. And it's quite likely that right now there is no scientific explanation why, if you are counting 8 inside of you when you are inhaling and 4 when you are exhaling, or if you are inhaling in 4 and exhaling in 8, there's no very clear scientific explanation. You could think a little bit about, what's happening when you're inhaling and when you're exhaling, and maybe the blood pressure, and I don't know, maybe something about the brain. But if you just do enough experiments of this and try it, inhaling 2, exhaling 4, inhaling 2, holding 8, exhaling 4, inhaling 1, holding 4, exhaling 2. these kind of different patterns, they are like little keys that open different states. So the yogis realize that when you breathe at a certain pattern, that's triggering a number of effects within you. And I think some of that will actually be someday scientifically explainable very clearly. Some of it will be. So if you are holding the breath for 4 times the length that you are inhaling, maybe there is something with the blood pressure and the brain, and then who knows? Maybe there is something there. But there is certainly something magical. And we know that the brain understands patterns. That's something that we are very, very well trained to do. Our human brain is excellent at recognizing patterns. So if you're inhaling in 1, holding 4, exhaling 2, and you do it again and again, the brain understands that pattern in a way that we cannot explain how, but that's having an effect on the brain. And you will realize that some patterns are calming, some are activating, some are cleansing, some are giving you energy. So depending on the pattern that you explore with the breath, I'm just focusing on the breath right now, even though Infinity was asking about the mantra, but it's the same thing. The way that mantra would be utilized would be as you are inhaling, you are chanting the mantra within you a number of times. So when I'm saying a pattern of 1, 4, 2, the way sometimes it's written 1, 2 dots, 4, 2 dots, 2, this means that you inhale during the chanting of one mantra within you, hold for 4 and exhale for 2. And that one mantra tended to be a long mantra, something like the Gayatri mantra. So, Om Bhurvubhuvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. You've been inhaling, now you hold the breath, Om Bhurvubhuvasva Tatsavit, 4 times, chanting it within, and then exhaling 2. Now that's going to make you breathe very slowly, and that's already having a lot of effects on the brain and the emotions and all that. But the actual number, 1, 4, 2, there's something magical about that. So that's one of the ways that numbers are connected to our experience of so how yoga utilizes numbers to have this sort of mystical or magical experience. Other numbers could be relevant to, for example, different times of the day, like Infinity was also asking, doing some practices at certain time of the day. There's something special, particularly about 2 hours and a half before the sun rises. And I explored that, and I think it was the very first video in this channel when I explored the idea that there is something about 60 degrees that it's special. And I related 60. I did 2 videos, one from the yogic side, one from the Karankriya side, exploring how the 60 degrees that we sometimes put with the arms, there is something special about that 60. So that's another way in which the numbers affect our practices. And then I explored it from the numerology and how 60 is connected to light as well. So that's something as well. I can totally relate that there is a strange connection between numbers, counting, and the unconscious mind. During childhood, every time I decided to wake up at a particular time, it would work exactly. But I lost that magic as I grew up. Yes, yeah. And you can program yourself, or I would know that the exact time to the minute before looking at the clock. Yes, we can program ourselves to understand that. But again, here science will say, well, we have a biological clock inside, and we have these circadian rhythms and ultradian rhythms, and the pineal within, and the pituitary, and the brain. There's a lot of things happening within us which are synchronized with time. And if you are sensitive enough, you can know that. I don't know. I could know where north is. I would lay down on a bed, and I would just know where the north is. I wouldn't have, it would have to be a new place, for example, and I don't have to think where. I would just, feel with my body and say, oh, this is the north. and some part of me would just know. So there is some magic that we have within, and we somehow lose it as we grow up. But you can train yourself to find it again. And this idea of waking up at a particular time, it's just a matter of putting enough intention, and it can happen like that. It's not something so difficult to get back. So, yes, doing something at certain times, at certain hours, a certain number of times, repetitions for breaths, for mantras, for kriyas, like the Surya Namaskar, a number of times. All that is a way to communicating with this infinite. It's a way to utilize this language, the sacred language of numbers, and have some direct relationship to that. When we do a particular meditation, 11 minutes is different from 10. Generally we do it for 11 or 22 or 31 or 62 or 2 hours and a half. And if you do it for 9 minutes, I mean, it's good, meditate, but if you do it for 11, there's something that you cross over. There's a line that you cross and you get to some different access. Yeah, you touch upon something else. And there's a number of touching stones, that you get to, like different lines that you cross. And if you do 11 minutes, then something happens. If you go to 22, if you go to 31, and one is affecting the hemispheres of the brain, or is affecting the chakras, is affecting your 10 spiritual bodies, is going to regulate your gunas, is going to put you into wider context with your subtle body, you can see how different minutes is going to have a different effect on you. But this is the nice thing. You can notice that. You can practice and you can have the experience. To me, it's very clear, this concept of the minutes, for example. When I was teaching regular classes, I would very often teach meditations which are 11 or 22 minutes. I would say almost every day. Yeah, that would be the regular. And I would notice, I would pay attention, and meditations tend to be difficult in some way. Some of them are just boring and it's difficult to stay awake. Some of them is just the concentration is hard because the mind gets distracted. Some of them are difficult physically. So you have to be with the arms up for 11 minutes, or some mudra, some particular mudra like this. Those are difficult meditations physically. And the mind struggles. When the body struggles, the mind struggles. Well, I would pay very close attention. And you know what? On the minute 10, there would be like 3 or 4 people lowering their arms. They were just about to cross the barrier, just about to get the benefit, of the meditation. And on the minute 10, they would be tempted. They have been struggling for 10 minutes. Maybe the first minute, no, it was okay. But, minute 5, minute 6, minute 7, it's bothering them, the shoulders, the arms, everything. Is like, come on, just do a break, Just stretch yourself a little bit. Just lower them a little bit and continue. But if you stayed completely mobile, then there is the maximum pressure comes on 10 minutes. And if you cross it, you can almost relax in that 11 minutes. And then you've crossed a barrier. And then the next one would be in 22 minutes, which we sometimes go into 22 minutes. But it would be very interesting that on the minute 10, how many people would lower their arms. And that's because you feel this tension that you are breaking through something, because it's having a magical effect on your subconscious, on your other spiritual bodies, not just the mind, on different levels of your energy channels, and so on. I had that experience myself many times, meditating alone with a timer, and sometimes I would do long meditation. So maybe I'm doing a 31-minute meditation. I would do that for many days. And some days you are there doing the meditation and you are absolutely convinced that the timer just stopped, that you forgot to press the button, that the batteries ran off, that somehow you touched it with the knee when you were adjusting for the meditation, and then maybe it stopped working, maybe it's not counting, and then you are like in doubt, right? But you are doing the meditation, you don't want to stop, but then you are doubting, is it really working? Because 31 minutes is a long time, so you are like, is it working, is it not working? So rather than meditating, you're actually worrying with the mind. And then at some point you cannot wait anymore, and you have to check. You have to check, right? And then you open your eyes, look at the timer, and there was only 1 minute left. So you see, I had been doing for 30 minutes, and on the last minute, rather than holding my position, I opened the eye and I was tempted to look, and then it was just 1 minute left. That happened so many times that I would notice and I would realize, oh, that feeling I'm getting, that's the feeling of getting close to the barrier. So I would slowly learn when that feeling comes, is not a moment to go into your doubt, your self-doubt. and oh, maybe I didn't press the button, or maybe the whatever. Should I check? Should I adjust the posture? I'm feeling uncomfortable. That's the moment when I know, oh, wait, the feeling is coming. That means I'm crossing through the barrier. So when you learn to recognize it, that's enough. Then you know the sensation and you can go through. And then something happens, right? 31 minutes, some effect is crystallized. And also, we do not just with the time that you are practicing, but also how many days you are practicing. So doing a meditation for 40 days or for 90 days has some special significance. It's not the same doing it 38 days, not even 39 days. It has to be 40 days. And why? It's magical. We don't know how. We don't know how it works, but you have to try it. And I've seen too many people going through, doing 40-day kriyas or meditations, and when they get to the 36, 37, 38, 39, something happens, some challenge occurs, and they gotta stop it because they cannot do the meditation that day. And then they have to start from scratch, start from zero. So if you do 40 days in a row, you cross through that line, and then 40, and then there's something easier, something breaking free, and then you are in a different state. So that's how it's connected. Numerology and spiritual practice is infinity. And I recommend, don't believe me, don't believe anything I say. Just check, just practice it, just be curious enough. And that's another thing that we lose a lot when we are little. We believe in magic and we are very curious. We want to know things, we want to explore them. And the more, as we are adults, as we go through education, we lose our sense of joy for the magic and creativity. We lose a lot of creativity and enjoyment and innocent appreciation of this body and this experience and life. And, we become adults. But do we lose all that because we become adults, or we become adults because we lose all that, right? As my mantra teacher used to say, we don't stop playing when we grow old when we stop playing. So I think that's a very reasonable thing, like Jesus Christ said, go back to being like little children, something like that, no? Coming back to that joy, coming back to that appreciation for magic, for life, and innocence. So coming back to that point of innocence and being like children. So if you can go back to connect to that innocence and curiosity and wanting to learn, just experiment. Do any meditation of this, with the breath, and try it. Inhaling 3, exhaling 4. What happens? Let's explore it. Nothing wrong is going to happen. You're just going to have an experience. And then you will realize that there is some patterns which have some effect and some patterns don't. And then the patterns that have some effect, then you can check some books and then, oh, that's why. But don't do it the other way around, because then you're going to be influenced by what you read. So first do the experiment, then go and check what was that breathing supposed to do? And that's something we do a lot in the trainings. When we're doing a training on mudras, for example, I know there's lots of books on mudras, but we try to go and explore by ourselves the feeling. And mudras are quite magical too. And we go into that mudra, and I like to do that in the evenings as well. Sometimes when we do intensive trainings, we do them at night. After dinner, we get together just before going to bed. We are very, very sensitive at that moment. And then I put the students in to do these different mudras, and without telling them what it means, just do this and then listen to everybody what they say. And then we realize that the universal effect that is having on them. And for some of them, they will have some personal effect, but then there's some component that is universal. And that's how you understand that there is something special about this practice. And that's how yoga was started. That's how it was, I was going to say invented. It wasn't invented. It was discovered, really. These numbers were discovered. These patterns were discovered. These mudras were discovered. And that's how they've been taught for so many thousands of years. If they were not valuable, if they were not useful, and if they didn't work, they wouldn't have lasted for so long. So it's worth listening to that. From my latest experience, I was chanting a mantra that it was said it should be chanted 3 times and experience the fruits of it daily. One day, I did it once and something very terrible happened. How would you explain that? Well, how would you explain it? What was your experience? I don't even know what mantra would it be, and I haven't come across any mantra that has to be chanted only 3 times and not one. But if you were following some instructions and you didn't follow the instructions, maybe you got away from the commitment that you were setting up yourself to do, and then that was the outcome. Maybe it was trying to tell you something. What did you get from that? Yeah. Because these are the things that a skeptic will say, oh, it's just a coincidence. Well, okay, fine. Okay, it's a coincidence, but I'm going to note it down. I'm going to take note of it. The days I followed the instructions of the meditation, it was good. I was having good fruits daily. The day that I distorted the instructions in some way, I had a bad experience. Something terrible happened. So I'm going to take a note. Yeah, my little personal diary of spiritual experiences. And then, I'm not gonna, don't give it too much thought, but put a pin on it. The next time you do another experiment, see what happens. And then when you start seeing that these things are happening more and more often, you will realize that there is no coincidences. Well, that's not true. There is also coincidences. It could happen, there can be also just a coincidence. But there is so much magic associated to these practices that is worth exploring that. So, infinity, how would I explain that? I would say, what explanation did you give it? What did you understand from that? And if anybody else has anything to ask or say, you can write it in the chat. But another good way to learning to appreciate this language of numbers, is like today, looking at the date of the day. Today is 10, 10, 10, so it's like 3 tens, very strong. And paying very, very close attention to that day. How did this day go? What happened throughout the day? And how was today different from yesterday? And noticing the similarities in other days which have these qualities of these numbers very strongly as well. So, on the 19th and on the 28th of this month, we will have the same numbers. Yeah, 19th, 28th, there will be the 10, 10, 10. So notice today, do this experiment and pay close attention tomorrow, the day after, until the 19th. And then you'll notice if in the 19th, something also is different. Yeah, and that's how we can learn to understand this language. I think it's Abiyut. Abiyut? I don't know what Abiyut is. Did you mean obvious? I'm not sure what Abiyut is. Invoking a certain energy. It needs a specific formula. And it has a slight difference. The nectar can turn into poison. Oh, about. I think it's about invoking a certain energy. It needs a specific formula, and it has a slight difference. Its nectar can turn into poison. That makes sense? Yes, that could be. It could be. Yeah. I mean, it's unusual for a mantra to become poison, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. I know some mantras which have, like the magic mantra, Ekonkar Satgur Prasad Ekonkar. That's something that should be chanted with reverence in a place of reverence. I am comfortable saying it here in this space, in this environment that I'm creating with you. But I wouldn't joke around this mantra. You can make jokes about other mantras, but not about this one. And it's called magic mantra too. So it's interesting, the idea of magic. Yeah, today we're talking about magic. And that mantra, it is said that if you joke about it and you chant it incorrectly, because it's called a boomerang effect, because you have to chant it going and coming back. Ekonkar Sagur Prasad Ekonkar. And if you don't chant it like that, and if you make a joke about it, or you laugh, or you are saying it in an improper way, or with lack of devotion and so on, it can backfire, and you can have some negative consequence. So that can be. Apart from this mantra, I don't know many who can have that effect, but it can also be that they can trigger something that you are not ready for, or it can move a lot of karma, right? And then when all this karma suddenly comes, because you were saying, Infinity, that something terrible happened. But did it have to happen? Maybe it had to happen. Maybe it was already something that was in your karma to experience, or maybe something that is going to help you to move towards your destiny, so that it had to happen. And the mantra, even if you chanted it only one time that day, all the other days you've been chanting it for 3 times, you've been slowly helping to manifest that. Because we are in a path to clear out the karmas. We are in a path of self-realization. Yoga, the objective of yoga is what we've been exploring with the Yoga Sutras, all this path of going through the practice and the samadhis. This is to get to Nirvija Samadhi, where there is no seeds, no samskaras, no karmas. Well, for that, we have to clear out the karmas that we have pending. And, every karma has in potential a lesson that we can learn. So, okay, something very terrible happened, but does that mean that it didn't have to happen? And just because you did the mantra in that way, you triggered that? Or was it part of your destiny and you had to experience it? Who knows? Because in Tantra, mantras are viewed another version of the deity in one dimension, sound, and if one plays the notes differently, a different song would play, different energy would be invoked. Yes, yes. So it can happen. Yeah, that's right. And in terms of tune, mostly you can make up the tunes that you wish. But yeah, there is certain things that have to be respected. And there is very strong inherent powers in some mantras. And it's good to go with the appropriate consciousness and devotion to the practice, and not just focus on the Shakti. Like some people just focus on, how many times do I have to chant it? Okay, I'm going to do that. But, they do it in a very... Okay, they read in some book that if you chant this, you're going to have these benefits. So I'm going to chant it so I can get the benefits. Very practical but very selfish kind of way. And there is some power in these mantras. And if you can... Power is Shakti, okay? I'm using that word very consciously, okay? And there has to be always a combination between Shakti and Bhakti. And I believe if your Bhakti is strong enough, even if you make a mistake and you chanted in the wrong tune, or the note is different, or the mantra doesn't come out perfectly, everything is forgiven and any negative effect would be neutralized. So if anything happens that you feel it's a terrible thing happening, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. And maybe the best thing happened even if it's in the wrong way. Without Bhakti, the Shakti won't be invoked. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, Infinity, because there's been plenty of cases in history, particularly in yogic history, where the Bhakti was lost. And for a number of hundreds of years, the yogis would concentrate on the siddhis and the powers that these practices would give them. And they would forget about the Bhakti and they would concentrate on the Shakti. And the Shakti has an effect and it's powerful and it works. And if you do those practices in that way, that effect you're going to get, and it works. It's very scientific. The yogic texts can be very, very scientific, very specific. Do these steps in this way, you're going to get this result. But if you do it without the Bhakti, then you are unprotected by grace. And you depend on, who knows, that maybe, I don't know what you would be triggering, yeah, but probably a lot of karma can move in that way. And yes, you can accumulate all sorts of powers which can come through this Shakti. But for what? What's the objective? Patanjali warns us, yeah, it's not about powers. It's about reaching this Nirvija Samadhi. It's about getting to where you are clean from all these impressions. And for that, we need the devotion to Isvara. Yeah, we need the devotion. So Shakti and Bhakti, that's the path forward. That's the path where we are right now. The modern era of yoga, this modern is, we are householders, We practice yoga, but we keep a balance between the Shakti and the Bhakti. They still that did it with intense emotions, however, on the negative side, emotions of greed or lust or anger. Yes, there is the 5 evils, right? There is the 5 great evils, or the 5 passions, they call it sometimes, the 5 thieves, the 5 water carriers. There's many names for that. But yes, like greed or wrath, anger, lust, these are definitely 3 of the 5. So attachment, avarice. So we should be always beware of that. We should be always careful. And that's why we need to temper the Shakti with the Bhakti. Keep both lying side by side. That, again, coming back to Patanjali, he starts with the yamas and the niyamas. Before we try to go into samadhi, start with the yamas and the niyamas. That's the philosophical and also you could say the moral side, if you wish. But it's also to protect you, because the more you go into that negative side, the more karma you're going to generate. And look, you are trying to do yoga to be free from the cycle of karma, and then you're creating karma by all these practices that you are doing. Wonderful yogi, but all this karma that you are generating, what's the point? So always both, the Shakti and the Bhakti. I was just remembering a line from this code of chivalry for men in the Middle Ages. The knights would have this line of tempering justice with mercy, because justice by itself can be a terrible thing. And I was just having some resonance with that, no? Like tempering Shakti with Bhakti, because Shakti by itself can also be a terrible thing. So this is like the sword. How do you use the sword? You have to be very, very aware. The moment that you unsheath the sword, you can either create a lot of karma, or you can cut the root of many karmas. So it is very, very tricky. You have to be very careful. But then, again, that's the power of the warrior. If you then unsheath the sword, then you are like helpless. You are like powerless. You are like a victim. So that's not the path. But then unsheathing the sword has responsibility, which is what all the teachings tells us, including Spider-Man, right? Responsibility. So, we live in a different age. We just press a button and all these teachings of yoga, which were very secret, have come to us. And we have to remember, look, why were they secret? Partly to protect us. Because if you had access to this power, the Shakti, and not balance it and temper it with the Bhakti, you would be victim to your own misdoings and create a lot of karma for yourself. So in order to protect us, they were secret. Now they are not. Now you can press any button and access them. And because you can access all these teachings, then the warning also comes, responsibility. If you're going to take all this that was secret and start exploring it, be sure that you are responsible and you temper Shakti with Bhakti. And that's why we also say, have a teacher that can keep you in line, that can make sure that you are balanced, that you are not misusing the practices, that you are not misunderstanding something, that you are, if you are doing experiments, that they are healthy experiments, let's say, that you are not going to be damaged at the end. So, which is also, Infinity, you were talking about Tantra and the practices you were doing. So it's good to go to your teacher, the teacher who gave you this mantra that you were repeating 3 times, and when you did it once, and ask your teacher who will have a direct connection to that mantra. Maybe they will tell you a bit more about this. 10, 10, 10, the day of today. I feel we come to a close with this conversation. We are in a good point to do a meditation. And cycle, I was just talking about this cycle of death and rebirth. Like the cycle of creating karma and then receiving the effect of the karma. And the circle and the cycle is the number 0 of the 10. We are 10, 10, 10. So how about we explore a meditation on this circle, on this cycle, on this loop? We're gonna do it by stages. I'm gonna start guiding you slowly, and then eventually you will do it on your own. But the guidance will have different stages, and the first stage will just be on the feeling sense. You're just gonna be feeling parts of your body, and in the next stage you're gonna link that to the breath. I mentioned one of these videos, recent videos about the Yoga Sutras. I was mentioning the relevance of breath and why is it so emphasized, why is it considered so supreme of all the practices. Pranayam helping to get to samadhi. So we will utilize breath, but before we go into breath, we will access the experience through the sense of feeling, because the sense of feeling is the touch, and in terms of chakras, it's associated to the heart. So it's going to keep us close to the bhakti of the heart and close to being soft with our practices. So let's do that today. If you can sit down in easy pose and spine straight, that would be great. Standing up is also fine. You can close your eyes if you can. If you cannot, and you are driving, for example, I have done this kind of meditation driving, obviously with the eyes open, but you can kind of do it a little bit driving as well, and it can actually help you stay awake. If you have a long drive ahead, I've done this meditation when I had to do like long, several hours driving all in a row, and I remember one night I was coming back from France, very, very tired, sick, nose terrible. It was 1 a.m, something like that. And I just said, well, you have to stay awake, you have to come back. So I did this kind of meditation, but without closing the eyes. And it allowed me to stay awake the whole path coming home. So it's not a meditation that is going to put you to sleep necessarily. When you link it to the breath, yeah? But the first part, again, we're not going to link it to the breath. So if you can, close your eyes. I practiced this for years myself, and uninterruptedly. So every day for years. Probably something like 5 years. And the way I practice it, I'm going to guide it today, but there is alternatives. And we're going to do the loop through the back into the front. And this loop can also be done through the front into the back, and it is said to be a quite different experience. But we're not going to go into that today. We're just going to go the way I practice it most. Right now, for a moment, just feel your body, feel your breath. Notice how you are feeling today. And if you feel the need to do some adjustment to your posture, do it now, so that later you can be still and you don't need to adjust anything. Check if you need to adjust the buttocks to be comfortable on the ground, or the legs, the back. Feel the weight of your body, the heaviness. And how this heaviness presses your body down against the ground. And there is a point of contact with the ground if you are sitting. If you're standing up, just notice the area around the perineum, the very bottom of the spine. That's the area we associate with the first chakra, Muladhara chakra, the root chakra. But we're not going to pay attention to the energy right now. We're going to be feeling the physical body. And feel the skin of the base of your spine and go backwards towards the sphincter and behind, and start to go slowly raising centimeter by centimeter, going up the buttocks, through the back, in the center of the back. As if you were climbing your spinal column, vertebrae by vertebrae. And you gotta feel every centimeter. If one moment you don't feel it, stop. And when you feel the next centimeter up from where you are, then you climb 1 centimeter. Don't try to rush. We should still be around the very lower spine. And when you feel the next vertebra, you can climb higher. 1 more. We are still in the very lower back. And you should feel the sensations around that area. But also you can feel the skin. You might even feel the contact of that region with the clothes. And you're climbing centimeter by centimeter, inch by inch. And if in one region you don't feel anything, stop. Because that's a region in your body where there is a void. And that's incredibly useful to know that that's a part of your body that you are not feeling. And it can actually be very, very healing to go through that region very, very slowly, paying close attention. You should be rising already above the navel, probably. But if some area you don't feel it, stop until you feel it, and then continue. If you lose yourself, go back to the last point you were feeling and continue from there. Centimeter by centimeter, inch by inch. There might be some gaps, some emptiness, especially between what would be the navel from the back and the heart from the back. So between the 3rd and the 4th chakra. But please do not advance if you don't feel some area. Just stay there until it comes. You are not imagining it. You are not visualizing it. It has nothing to do with a visualization exercise. This is purely feeling. Refine your sense of touch, particularly on the back. You should be coming closer to the heart now if you have not reached it yet. If you have already reached the heart, and you can carry on, centimeter by centimeter, slowly. And you have to be very sincere with yourself, because sometimes there is a temptation, well, I don't really feel it, but I will just go to the next spot that I feel. And maybe you jump to behind your neck, the nape of the neck or something. Well, don't jump anything. If there's some vertebrae you are not feeling, stay there. Wait for the feeling to come. Be patient. Don't skip a step. as you get to the nape of the neck, there might be other things happening as well. You may notice that your sense of hearing changes. But that's okay, you don't have to pay any attention to that. Just concentrate vertebrae by vertebrae. Every single cervical vertebrae, you should feel it behind you. Up to the point where they join the skull. And then when they touch the skull, from that point you start going up through the skull, but slowly and methodically. If 1 centimeter is not felt, you stop there. You would be coming close to the top of your head. If you have already reached, stay there. If it takes you a bit longer and you are watching this video pre-recorded, you can pause the video until you reach. When there is a region in the back that we are not feeling, it's like those nadis, those energy channels are blocked. There's no energy passing through and we just don't feel the sensations because there's no energy around there. So by paying close attention to the feeling, you are opening up those channels again and regaining what was lost. And the body has memory, so you are accessing those areas that were lost and forgotten. When you get to the crown, stay in the crown, the top, the peak, the highest point in yourself. And then you cross the highest point and start going forward. And continue drawing this line from the front of the skull, going towards the front of the skull, in the direction of the forehead, but don't run. Centimeter by centimeter, inch by inch. You will at some point reach the forehead and feel every pore of the skin, if you wish, of the forehead going down towards the third eye. Every little millimeter of skin. The face is very sensitive, so take your time. Eventually you will reach the root of the nose, between the eyebrows, where the nose starts. And you go through the middle line of the nose. Remember, this is not a visualization exercise. It's a feeling exercise. Every millimeter of skin in the nose down towards the tip of the nose. And then on the other side of the tip, you begin to climb down and notice the feeling coming towards the higher lip. Feel the center of your higher lip. Keep going down. Lower lip and chin eventually. Keep going down until you reach the tip of your chin and then going back inwards towards the throat. There is a hole in your throat. Make sure you go through all of it as you start coming into your chest, upper chest. And continue going down again. If you don't feel something, don't just skip ahead. Don't just continue. Be sincere. Be honest with your practice and stay there until you feel it. At some point you'll reach your heart. The center of your chest. You can enjoy it for a second and then keep going. The next area may be a bit more subtle, more difficult to feel. That's okay. You're crossing the diaphragm. You may also feel it moving with the breath. But don't worry about it. Just continue feeling. And at some point you will reach the navel. and keep going. You will go past the navel point, which is lower than the physical navel, down from the third chakra to the second. And you will cross the pubis, and you will go through the sexual organs and continue all the way to the starting point. When you get to the starting point, stay there for a second. I'm going to guide it so much faster now, even though I'm just doing it so that you know the practice, the full practice. But normally you could just stay going at this speed. You could do a few more rounds if you wished. And it's good to do this every now and then. This is like a special calibration to make sure that every skin along the back and the front of your body, this whole orbit, it's called microcosmic orbit. The whole of it, you have feeling, you have sensations. But after you've done it a few times, then you can go much, much faster. I'm gonna guide you and try to go at my rhythm, even though before I said, do it at your own rhythm and stop if you don't feel something. Try to follow the rhythm that I'm gonna dictate now. So start from the base, start going backwards, climbing up, buttocks, between the buttocks, lower spine, lumbar region, climbing towards the navel in the back, a bit higher, going towards the diaphragm in the back and towards the space between the shoulder blades, climbing with your consciousness through the space between the shoulder blades into the upper region of your spine, of your back, upper shoulders, into the neck, through the back, cervical vertebrae, going up towards the skull, and then the back of the skull going up, 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 towards the top, reach the top, and going down through the front, down through the front of the skull, to the forehead, down the forehead, into between the eyebrows, root of the nose, down the nose, tip of the nose, going back in, down towards the upper lip, lower lip, chin, and down towards your throat, into the whole of the throat, down, 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 down. Upper chest, front of the heart, diaphragm, be careful crossing here, don't lose it, towards the navel, navel down, 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 down. Pubis, sexual organs, and the root. Well done. Stay there for a moment. And now you're going to do it, but now you're going to connect this movement to your breath, which means that when you are inhaling, you're going to be climbing through the back, and when you are exhaling, you're going to be going forward from the top, through the forward part of your body. But it's going to be slow. It's going to have to be very, very, very slow breath, and make the whole breath last as long as you need to cover the whole region. So, yeah, inhale deep before we start. And exhale, 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 exhale. And on the next inhale, at your own rhythm, I'm not going to guide it. Go through the back and try to be with a certain pace so that you can do it all in one breath. But make sure you visit every region. Don't skip any part. Keep inhaling until you reach the crown. If you are full when you reach the throat, the back of the neck, just keep going until you reach the crown. Keep inhaling even if no more air comes in. And then when you reach the crown, you can stay there for an instant before starting the descent, slowly exhaling, and measure your breath so you have enough breath for the whole forward part of your body. And when you reach the end of the exhale and when you reach the bottom of your body, again on the next inhale, you continue and you climb again. And then whenever you exhale, relax. And then inhale deep. And exhale. And whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes. It can be difficult to open your eyes after this practice. It's quite deep, So if you want to practice this, I would recommend to do the very, very slow practice we did first, 2 or 3, 4, 5 times, 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, and to make sure every centimeter is you're feeling, you're having feelings in every centimeter. That could be also very interesting to note if some part of your body feels disconnected. And it could be a practice that you can revisit every now and then. And then the regular practice, the one I would do every day, is with the inhale through the backs and exhale through the front, link to the breath, and you can also link it to a mantra. So you can do like a mul mantra, one mul mantra inhaling and one mul mantra exhaling, for example, or you can chant another mantra if you wish. And do it every day and count how many breaths you want to do. It's very, very slow. The breath is, when I would do it, it would be more or less 1.5 breaths per minute, more or less. And make sure that you are sincere. And when you are inhaling, if at some point you don't feel that area, you wait until you feel it. And the breath may be like, a part of you is going to get anxious because it's like, oh, come on, I need to exhale, but you're still not feeling that area. And you have to tell yourself, I'm not going to go up until I feel the back. And then when you feel it, okay, you cross through, you get to the top, then you're exhaling through the front, maybe it gets stuck somewhere. You're like, okay, where is my chin? Where is my chin? Where is my chin? I have to exhale, I need more air. But you have to be like very, very, very disciplined and go slowly, part by part. And as soon as you overcome these obstacles, then it starts to flow and it becomes like a machine, a spiritual machine, doing this microcosmic orbit. And it's very profound. I hope you had a good experience. How about this? You can write in the comments later in the video how it was for you. But I hope you got the idea of the practice. It's about feeling. You can link it to the breath and you can also link it to the mantra. And it's very profound. Because we did this practice, let's chant the May the Long Time today. And we'll chant the Satnam at the end. And we will close for today. It will be enough for today. And next week we will come back. Next week we will come back with the beginning of chapter 2 of the Yoga Sutras. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on, guide your way on, guide your way on. This practice, I must say, is not from Kundalini Yoga. I've seen it in different disciplines, and some of the subtleties of the practice I learned from a friend of mine who is a Kung Fu teacher and Feng Shui. But I've seen it in other forms of yoga as well. I've seen the practice with the inhale through the backs and exhale through the front. Just experiment and see what you get from that. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone who was watching and everyone for supporting the channel. Thank you for liking and subscribing the video, and see you next time.